All right, y'all. Let's go ahead and wrap it up. All right. You know, in the past segment of this absurdly long story, I explained, how the situation came to be what it is, right? And how I haven't seen my daughter, and the reasons why I haven't seen my daughter for a little bit over 5 years now. All right. And I want to explain this. When it comes to my ex wife, what I've realized over the years, all right, I realized it actually a while back. So when you consider my wife's whole life story, and trust me, I know basically her whole life story. When you consider my wife's whole life story, you start to realize that there was never a man in her life, ever, to include her father, right? Actually, to include her current husband, right? As far as I know, that they're still married. As far as I know, there's never been a man in her life willing to dedicate themselves to Ashley. You know what I mean? To doing what's right by Ashley. To include myself. Like I said, I never treated Ashley the way that she should be treated. In fact, I never treated Ashley the way a girl in general should be treated. Right? And that is to say, to stand by her, to not attack her, to not trespass against her. All right. There's not one example of a man in her life who's ever done that for Ashley. And of course, she's done bizarre things, all right? But at the same time, I'm not in her head. You know what I'm saying? I can't tell you her motivations, but I can tell you for a fact there's never been a man at all, not one, in her life who's ever given her a full sense of security ever, and there may never be. Right, like I said, during our relationship, I certainly didn't give her that sense of security. That didn't happen. Right, but I realized uh, throughout these past years that even after the fact, there's still a chance. I still have the capability to turn it around in a sense. Like, I wasn't there during our relationship. Trust me, our relationship's over. I mean, she's got remarried. Obviously, I'm not delusional, right? We're never getting back together again. That's just not going to happen. Obviously, I'm not delusional in that sense. But at the same time, that doesn't mean that I have to continue this pattern. You know what I'm saying? I can turn it around and be, even if we don't see each other, I can still decide to not turn against my wife, right? Because to be honest, like, and to be short, to be simple, betraying my wife is the same thing as betraying her daughter, my daughter, our daughter. It's the same thing. A lot of people don't understand. They wouldn't understand what I'm talking about when I say that. But to attack my wife now, obviously that would have devastating effects on me and my daughter's relationship, and I'm just not willing to do it. It's unaffordable. It's just unaffordable. Meanwhile, I'm easily found, and I've given the invitation time and time and time again. Please come and see me. Please bring my daughter. Please, please, please. To everybody, falling on deaf ears completely. And first of all, I don't have hatred for anybody in the world, to be honest with you. And once you become born again, you start to realize that's a big part of being born again, is you realize that people really can't, people get themselves in situations that it's not in their control. Right? People think that they're in control in life and stuff until they realize, nah, they're not. All right, and it might take forever for them to realize it. And some people wind up in the end paying a very steep price for thinking that they're in control. Trust me, on the other side of the screen, whoever I'm talking to, whether you know it or not, you're not in control of anything, right? Everything can be taken from you in an instant. You could lose everything. You're not in control of it, all right? So, with that being said, like I said, my wife, it's hard to know her motivations. It's hard to know her intent. I'm not in her head, right? All I know is that she's been betrayed by every single man in her life, except for maybe her papa, to be honest with you. But her papa died a long time ago. Actually, shortly after our separation, he died, and I come to find out. All right. So, but there's nobody for her. There's nobody that to stand up for my ex-wife. Nobody. Right. If it's not me, then it'll be nobody. Right. And I don't have the heart to do that. I don't have the heart to. I mean, I already treated her in such an insensitive way to continue to do that. I don't have the heart to do that. All right. I just don't. And I'm not going to. She needs to know one way or another. I'm not going to trespass on her ever again, to include calling up some attorney, to include calling up, having people track her down. And you know what I'm saying? It's not going to happen. I'm letting her know, just bring my daughter. Let me see her. I'm not asking anything else of you. All right? You can live your life and you can do whatever you want. I have nothing, there's nothing I can say about it, but I'm not going to attack you. All right? I've already hurt you enough. So I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. All right? And we're about to wrap this up, but I mentioned a long time ago in this story, a long time ago, that I have a grandmother who I never met. All right? You might remember, you might recall a long time ago when I brought it up. I have a grandmother who I never met. And the reason is because she jumped out a window, committed suicide, long before I was born. All right. And this was when my father and uncle still lived in New Jersey, from what I understand, right? Because my uncle had to go and identify the body, you know. Um, and it wasn't too long after that my father and my uncle both moved away from New Jersey, found their way in San Antonio. Okay. Obviously, they're probably very well affected by the suicide of their mother. Right? So they tried to get away from all that. Come to San Antonio. It wasn't, I guess, too long after they got to San Antonio that their father actually wound up dying as well. I guess of natural or somewhat natural causes. You know what I mean? He wound up dying. Not too long before I was born, actually. All right. I forget what I would imagine is sometime like in 84 or 85. He probably wound up dying. All right. Alone by himself. All right. His children off in another state couldn't care less. Basically, all right. They were trying to get away from him. Like I said, he, according to the stories, he's a very violent guy, a very depressing guy, right? And it probably had a lot to do with my grandmother jumping out a window, all right? But here's what I got to explain that's extremely significant. My father and his twin brother are not the first children of my grandmother. Kind of find out, right? This was explained to me a couple of times, very briefly, but I understand it completely. They're not her first children. Okay? Her first child, I forget what his name is, right? She'd been married before. Before she was married to my grandfather, she was married before. And they actually had a son, right? And subsequently, they wound up getting divorced, I guess. Back in that day, it's kind of unheard of, but they thought they'd be pioneers. And so my grandmother broke it off. And in fact, she broke it off to be with my grandfather. I don't know any of the details of that story, to be honest. And obviously, nobody's itching to tell me the details of that story, right? So she broke it off with her previous husband in order to be with my grandfather, who wound up, according to legend, he wound up being an alcoholic and an abuser, right? And that could be a total lie, but that's what I've been told by both my uncle and my father, right? So it was many years after that, many years, that my grandmother winds up jumping out of a window, right? Now, I don't know the exact details of why. You can only infer as to why that is. But I can't help but suspect that it had a lot to do with remorse and regret. In fact, I feel it in my bones that had a lot to do with why she wound up jumping out of a window. Okay? So, okay, that is what it is, right? See, my father and my uncle have a half brother, right? Um, their mother winds up jumping out of a window and committing suicide. All sort of remorse, all sort of regret in her heart, haunting her, eating at her on the inside. They come down to San Antonio, in which my father meets my mother. And guess what? The pattern continues. See? The pattern continues. He winds up marrying my mom while she's pregnant with me. She also had a son, right? Prior to that. And like I said, my older brother's never met his father, right? That's gonna have some spiritual damage, right? That's gonna take a toll out on you to never know your father. It really is. My older brother doesn't have to tell me. In fact, I'm pretty sure he would never tell me if he ever did feel that way. All right. The pattern continues, you see? And the thing is, it's very alarming. It should be disturbing to everybody, but it's not. It's actually become commonplace. Dare I say, half of families out there right now are mixed families. That should be alarming. That should be disturbing, right? Certainly, it's going to lead to all sort of regret and remorse, and in some cases, it's going to lead to suicide. It has nothing to do with me. It's out of my control. That's just what's trending these days, you know? Um, these mixed families. Trust me, back in the day, mixed families were extremely rare, right? Like I said, now it's commonplace. It might be the majority of families out there are mixed, right? Completely, whether they know it or not, broken and distorted and messed up. And I'm not blaming anyone out there. I'm not looking at my family and saying, "Oh, y'all are totally evil people." What I'm saying is, they got themselves into a situation that's actually very dire. It's actually very desperate. And a lot of people are getting themselves in that situation, right? In which all these families are mixed, all sort of betrayals going on. There are families out there that are not mixed and stuff, but honestly, I would say probably less than half. All right, and the pattern continues. You understand? My grandmother accepted this mixed family business and betrayal and divorce and starting again and stuff like that, thinking, oh yeah, well now we can make it a better way. No, you're not going to run from your problems. My grandmother figured that out the hard way. You're not going to run from your problems. You're only going to make it worse. All right. And so my dad, like I said, he comes to San Antonio. He gets himself involved in a very, very similar situation. And I got to let you know, without getting too detailed, it's becoming very dire for my father and my mother both. All right. The family that they cling to out of desperation these days is very fickle. And in the end, it's not going to mean anything for them. I'm here to tell you it's very unfortunate. And I have no grudges against them. I hate nobody on earth, right? Especially them. I forgave them a long time ago. And I would suggest everybody forgive their parents, because if you don't forgive your parents, although some people's parents have done heinous things, um, it's going to come back to haunt you. And that's for certain. It's going to come back to haunt you, and you're going to repeat the pattern, and the pattern is just going to continue. The curse is just going to continue to carry on in this way. That's why, okay, that's why my older brother is my half brother. So the curse continues. I accepted it. My brother bought into it. You see, his oldest daughter, if you will, is not his daughter. You see how the trend continues. I accepted it. I never spoke out against it because I never knew any better. I just said, "Oh, this is. I guess this is how it goes. Everybody's mixed families and stuff like that, and who cares?" As far as my oldest niece's father, I never paid it no mind. Not until recently. I just assumed, okay, yeah, my sister-in-law, whatever she got with this guy before my older brother, and he's a deadbeat, and who cares? And he's a deadbeat father, and so that's what I used to assume back in the day. He's a deadbeat father. And here's the reality: I have no clue. I've never met her father. In fact, my oldest niece has never met her father. You see, the trend continues. And I accepted it because I knew no better, just like everybody else is accepting it around us. But again, still, people are so blind that they don't see that this is carrying out through multiple generations. And it's just going to continue. It's a curse. And a lot of people don't understand it. It's actually a curse. To have these big old mixed families and stuff. And not to say that every family is going to suffer dire consequences, but I'm just here to say it's a terrible thing to have happen. And a lot of people are going to suffer dire consequences. Not through any effort of my own. I'm just saying it's not a good look. It's not heading a good direction. And in fact, failure is only going to continue until a certain generation decides, hey, I'm going to stop this curse that's happening of generation after generation after generation of mixed families. I'm going to stop because I realize that this is actually wrong. This is wrongdoing on my part, to not treat a woman good enough to where she feels secure enough to stay. She gets all mixed up. She realizes there's no dependability. She's hopping from guy to guy, all right? Until she lands on one who will put up with it, all right? And the thing is, it doesn't tend to work out well even in that case. The trend continues. It's going to stop only when someone figures out that we're actually messing up. Now, I could go ahead and fraternize with any sort of ladies or whatever and get myself into a terrible situation again if I wanted to, but I really honestly don't want to, because I understand the terrible, dire situation I'd be putting myself into. To try and create another family, that ain't gonna work. It's not in the cards, right? Because here's the thing, I could do that and I could expect my daughter to somehow figure it out, that we're all ending up as failures in the end. I could expect her to go ahead and turn the tide around, and change this and alleviate the curse that's happening intergenerationally. I could, but here's the thing. She has no examples. There's nobody setting that example for her. If it's not me, then it's nobody. She does not have an example between right and wrong, all right? And it's a desperately lonely existence and things of that nature. But somebody has to stop this curse. And if it's not me, well, then maybe it'll be her, but maybe it's not her either. She doesn't have an example. See where I'm going? She needs, my daughter needs her father to do the right thing. And most people don't even know what the right thing is, all right? Because they've never had an example, all right? So I need to set that example the best that I can. And that involves not betraying my ex-wife, not attacking my ex-wife, instead being a martyr of sorts. And in that, now I'm here between a rock and a hard place. But that's just because that's what needs to be done. I love my ex-wife. Like I said, I have no delusions. We're not getting back together. But the thing is, somebody needs to stand up for her. My ex-wife, just like everybody else's ex-wife, was born as a little baby. And at the very least, what she deserved was a man to be there for her. Of course, it should have been her father. It turned out that wasn't the case. Turned out he had some very big problems. Turns out he couldn't even help himself. And he wound up betraying her. My ex-wife's father wound up betraying her in the worst kind of way. And he can't even control what he does. He's not in control. All right? The only way to get control, if you will, and you're still not in control, is to give it to God. To give your control up to God. All right? And how do you do that besides just surrendering? And finally, swimming against the tide, going against the grain, and finally doing the right thing. I mean, because it's clearly explained in the Bible, and it shouldn't even have to be explained in the Bible, to be honest with you. It should be something that we know in our hearts. We should stop betraying each other. We should stop living in such a scandalous way. And a lot of people will never figure this out, or they'll figure it out in the hardest way possible. That we're betraying ourselves. We're betraying the whole human race. We're betraying each other. We're being scandalous. We're living the wrong way. And it has, like I said, dire consequences. We're living the wrong way. We're choosing to. We're thinking that we're in control. We're thinking, oh, we don't like this situation, so I'm going to change it. No, you're in a situation that you're in because God put you there. You changing the situation, thinking, oh, I'm going to find a better situation over there because the grass is greener. That what you're doing is figuratively putting a rope around your neck. You're tying the noose. Figuratively, what you're doing is you're ensuring that one day you might be the one jumping out the window because all you have is regret and remorse. Because you thought, oh man, the way the situation God put me in, that's not right. That's not the right situation for me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave. And what I'm going to do is make it right because God got it wrong. All right. I'll leave out on this note. Marriage, I come to find out, and a lot of people will never figure this out. It's not what you think it is. A lot of people think, especially these days, I mean, back in the day, people probably figured it out. But since then, they have totally forgot. They have no clue. Most people don't believe in God at all. Or they believe in some sort of God that they fashion in their minds. All right. And that God is something that they make up in their minds. And whatever morality that they have in their minds, that's what they envision that that's God's morality. But no, they're actually making it up. All right. As far as marriage goes, first of all, the Bible clearly states, but it doesn't need to. I'm not just going off the Bible, but it states that you shouldn't have you shouldn't have relations, if you will, at all until you're married. All right? It shouldn't be. A lot of people don't agree with it. They say, oh, no, I'll find out a better way. We can have relations. We can have all the relations we want before we get married. We figured out a better way. We don't need marriage. You understand? We're going to do the relation. We're going to mess up the sequence. We found out a better way. Okay, so let's mess up the sequence. All right? Here's the thing. Marriage is very misunderstood. Why? Because we don't have good examples anymore. That's deteriorated away. That's dissolved away. Marriage is completely misunderstood. Most people, like I said, they don't believe in God, or they believe in whatever God that they want to make up. Most people think marriage is an agreement between two people. All right, typically a man and a lady, but now who knows? It could be a man and a man, a lady and a lady, a man and a horse. The sky's the limit. People think whatever it is. People think marriage is whatever they think it is. But typically, people tend to believe that marriage is an agreement between two people. It's a promise from one person to another and vice versa. And actually, no, it isn't. It really isn't. They've got it all wrong, but they're trying to play God. They're trying to create their own way. Actually, marriage, what it is, I could tell you for certain, if nothing else on this earth, marriage is a promise from one person to God. It's between you and God. It has nothing to do with this other person. I know it's between two people, the bond. You know what I'm saying? But the actual marriage and the wedding ceremonial, what that is a promise to God, not to this other person. It's a promise to God that you're making. And you can go ahead and break that promise if you want. And you could suffer whatever consequences come after that. But I've seen the consequences. And I don't wish those consequences on anybody on earth. However, they're going to keep playing out. Marriage is an agreement between you and God. Betray it at your own risk. I love you. It's a very risky situation you're getting yourself into. That much I can promise you. I've seen it. I've seen the results. Anyways, that's the end of the story. And that's where I'm at. And that's where I'll stay. The end. I'll holler at y'all.